We have a responsibility to the land.
I'm Colleen.
I just wanted to come home and farm here at home, do things my way. It's probably the most sustainable type of farming that there is. I've reduced my carbon footprint by 30%, the equivalent to 167 cars off the road. It's a really beautiful part of the world and we're trying to look after it as best we can.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to present in front of you. As labor and structures around human resources are always an important topic to discuss, today we're going to cover a different way to look at those candidates that can make a better impact in your dairies through changes in the way that we work with them and adapt to them in our reality. This presentation will cover how we can use personality tests and internal surveys as a different approach to manage dairy employees. Employment personality tests have become increasingly popular in recent years as a tool that can help us to filter and manage employees. But in agriculture, and especially in dairy, this is not a tool that is commonly used. Personality employment tests are an objective, standardized way of gathering data and are an efficient way of gaining insights into the capabilities and traits of employees. Depending on the type of test being used, employee assessments can provide relevant information on a person that is applying for a job in your dairy or an existing employee's ability to perform in your dairy. Some of these tests can also help us to screen people overselling themselves, such as animal activists in our industry. Employment tests offer a wide ranging of benefits that not only streamline the hiring process, but also can make a dairy stronger by increasing the chances of your employees to be successful in their positions. The most significant benefits a dairy may experience by implementing an effective employee testing solution can include a more efficient, less time-consuming hiring process using objective and validated metrics, increased employee retention and reduction in costs associated with turnover. Increased employee retention and reduction in costs associated with turnover, such as hiring and training costs and higher productivity. Reducing turnover in the dairy industry can have wide-ranging benefits that ripple through an entire organization. Lower turnover rates can boost employee morale and can elevate a dairy's reputation externally, which in turn make it easier for your dairy to attract and hire better quality candidates. One study estimates that replacing entry-level employees costs about 16% of their annual salary, and this number increases even more for higher paid positions. I think we need to stop and think for a moment about what we can do different, although we are all aware of the employee situation we suffer in America to fill jobs in agriculture. There are many different types of pre-employment tests, but they generally fall in three categories: aptitude, personality, and skills. Let's talk about each of them and the tools available to you. Aptitude. Aptitude tests measure critical thinking, problem solving, and the ability to learn, digest, and apply new information such as herd health protocols and milking routines. In essence, aptitude tests seek to assess an applicant's general intelligence or brain power. According to a study conducted by LinkedIn, the two most important qualities employers seek are problem-solving skills, 65%, and the ability to learn new concepts, 64%. These abilities are difficult to assess based solely on interviews. And this is where an aptitude test can help. Imagine your milking technicians being able to fix problems related to milking equipment, mastitis, and the ability to be more proactive when they receive trainings. Personality tests are very popular among HR professionals. Yet, there are still quite a few misconceptions about what personality tests are and how they should be used. Personality tests seek to answer the questions. Will the employee be comfortable in this role? Does the employee have the behavioral traits that are linked to success in this position? Unlike with aptitude tests, there are no right or wrong answers on personality tests. Measuring these traits can help employers predict job fit by determining if a candidate's behavioral tendencies are a good match for both the position and the dairies culture. Personality tests can measure many different traits, but the most prominent personality test framework uses what is called the Big Five or the five-factor model. These are the 5 dimensions of personality that consistently emerge in empirical research: agreeableness, conscientiousness, extroversion, openness to experience, and stress tolerance. Skill tests, on the other hand, measure job-related abilities. Broad ones like verbal and communication skills, or narrow ones like typing and computer skills. These are skills that candidates have picked up through their education and career histories. These skills do not necessarily reflect basic aptitude, but instead reflect acquired knowledge, what the applicant already knows, how to do based on previous experience. Another type of personality test seeks to assess a candidate's integrity or honesty. These assessments, known as integrity tests, help employers manage risk by assessing if an applicant will be a reliable employee who will follow the rules. Most integrity tests focus on an applicant's tendencies and attitudes relating to rule adherence. These tests can be used to predict behavior. In some cases, dairies use background checks, but these are expensive and only target people who have a past criminal records. To serve as an example for this presentation, in our customer service program within Alltech, we have a software called the Alltech Labor Profile, which contains a personality assessment called the Workplace Productivity Profile. And we use it to help dairy farmers to predict whether an individual will be a conscientious, productive, and reliable employee. It is used primarily for entry-level positions where following rules and trust are very important, like milking routines, calving SOPs, cleaning stalls, and other activities. This test can be used to predict overall performance as well as to screen out candidates judged to be more prone to possible disciplinary problems. The test measures several traits. This is just a snapshot how the report looks after the employee has taken the test. This test can be taken online by the candidate or the existing employee using a link generated through our system. Applicants who receive high ratings in this test are judged to have a high likelihood of being diligent, reliable, and productive. The scales that we use in this test are high, medium, or low. As you can see in this screenshot of the report, the first two traits, conscientiousness and perseverance, relate to a person's likely work habits. The other two, honesty and attitude towards theft, relate to a person's integrity and perceived risk of engaging in counterproductive work behavior such as theft, time wasting, and fraud. This is a percentile scale based where you can compare your employee with thousands of applicants at entry level for any organization. Let's talk about these individual traits in this report. Let's talk about conscientiousness for the first scale. This scale is an indicator of a person's tendencies with respect to being deliberate, self-disciplined, organized, and dependable. High scores tend to be reliable, hardworking, and goal-oriented. They also are likely to be organized and to be rule followers. Low scorers in this scale tend to be less cautious and are often described by others as laid back, less goal-oriented, and can be impulsive and not inclined to plan things in advance. The other scale, perseverance, measures a person's tendencies with respect to being diligent, having consistent interests, and persevering in the face of adversity. High scorers tend to be not easily discouraged. They also maintain consistent interest and focus on long-term goals. Low scorers tend to change interests frequently and may be more inclined to change courses rather than press on when faced with setbacks or adversity. The honesty scale in this report measures a person's beliefs in the importance of following rules and laws, and with respect to the value of honesty. High scorers favor the consistent application of laws and moral rules and tend to place a high value of honesty and integrity in their dealings with others and with animals. They also tend to be respectful of authority. Lower scorers tend to endorse more flexible attitudes to rules, often allowing for exceptions. They also tend to be distrustful to others. And think about using a test like this for people in your dairy that oversees the use of antibiotics, for example. This report contains attitude towards theft. We all deal with this problem in our dairies. This scale provides an indication of a person's attitudes towards theft and fraud. Individuals who score highly in this scale show little tolerance for theft or fraud. They do not see theft or fraudulent behavior as common or excusable, and they do not report any inclination of their own to carry out theft. This is very important. In the other hand, low scorers on this scale see theft as fraud as common in the workplace. This is not good. If you are or will be using a personality test in your dairy, make sure this test contains an internal scale designed to detect which individuals exhibit tendencies to fake the test or present themselves in an overly positive light. In some cases, we have the opportunity to help farmers to catch animal activists before they get hired, as they usually try to represent themselves in an overly positive manner so they can get hired and cause damage to the dairy. One of the other tools that you can use with your existing employees for the purpose of enhancing self-awareness and encouraging growth and development is the workplace insights, another kind of report. As you can see in this snapshot of the report, you can have a visual understanding of your employees' workplace stressors and motivators that will help you understand his or her behavioral preferences. This kind of report, it may also be shared with team members and managers, so they may become aware of your employees' work styles and how his or her behavioral tendencies may influence interactions with team members in your dairy. As you can see here, the purpose of this summary, forming a web, it's compare your employees with the general population. And this serves to enhance self-awareness and encourage growth and development. In this workplace insight report, for example, you can have a good idea of your employees' attitude, work habits, temperament, and interaction styles. The other part of the presentation is to talk about internal surveys as a tool to discover or restructure the internal culture in your dairy. This is not very common, but first, before moving into describing what these surveys are, I think we need to identify or define what is culture, or what is the meaning of the culture in your dairy. First, let's define what internal culture or organizational culture is in your dairy. Conventionally defined as the ensemble of beliefs, assumptions, values, norms, artifacts, symbols, actions, and language patterns shared by all members of your dairy. Culture is thought to be an acquired body of knowledge whose interpretation and understanding provide the identity of the dairy and a sense of shared identity among all your employees. A good and easy way to understand how your employees view the internal culture of your dairy, if there is an existing one, is to ask for their feedback in a way where they can share their own opinions. In other words, look at yourself in the mirror as a manager and find ways to improve or redesign the culture in your dairy. Internal surveys can help you to measure internal structures, systems, technologies, and skills and qualities so you can address areas of concern to not only improve workplace culture, but improve employee productivity and motivation. Here's a list of several benefits you can get from doing an internal survey in your dairy. But the most important part of doing an internal survey is to better understand how you can address areas of concern to not only improve workplace culture, but also to improve employee productivity and motivation. Several of the goals are uncover answers to what motivates employees, evoke discussions between farm management and employees, make decisions based on objective information, and establish a benchmark from which to compare future results. This is just a snapshot of a report we create after we do internal surveys for dairy farmers. With this information, the dairy farmer can see the needs or the strong points of his or her organization based on the employee's perception. Now, if you want to use these kind of tools on your dairy farm, it is very important to have realistic goals and expectations for what an employment testing program can achieve for your dairy. Keep in mind that some applicants or existing employees don't have the ability to read or understand some of the questions formulated in these kind of tests. So some assistance in this case should be applied. Please use professionally developed, validated testing instruments so you can add objective, data-driven metrics to the hiring and retention process. And it's very important to always keep in mind that no tests is a perfect way to predict performance. Remember that employment tests should be only one element within a set of criteria used to evaluate applicants or existing employees, such as references from other dairies or members of your team, interviews, job experience, education, and anything else that is relevant for a position in your dairy. In my opinion, knowing your employees' skills, motivation, weaknesses, and abilities can help you. And the employees themselves, you can help them too, to be more successful on the job, whether they are working on entry-level positions such as a milking technicians in the parlor, or a more skilled role such as feeding technicians. Thanks so much for your time listening to this presentation, and God bless you.
Maddie, what are the questions?
Hi, so if you go over to the agenda button and then go down to our session, and click the session. And to the bottom, do you see the questions bar?
Jorge, would you like
Okay, there you go. I had to refresh these in order to see the questions.
Perfect.
Yes, so there are a couple of questions and I'm going to read them out loud and I'm going to answer the questions as I go. The first question from Lauren, it says, how often should we administer these tests to our employees? Quarterly, bi-yearly, or yearly? That's a great question, Lauren. I think it depends on what kind of tests we're talking about. In this presentation, we talk about personality tests and internal culture surveys. For the personality test, I think it is good to do and apply these kind of tests every time that you hire somebody new, and every time that you're looking for a candidate. So in those two, for personality, you should apply for every new employee. And then as far as the cultural surveys, you have to apply or run those kind of surveys every time that the population of your dairy organization has several new employees. So that should be based on the turnover of your dairy. So it could be done every 3 months, 6 months, or once a year. But it's always it's good to run the internal surveys at least once a year to always hear and listen for the feedback the employees have to share with you. So that's very important. The second question is, if I can scroll these down here, is from Nicole, is how do we make employees feel comfortable enough to be extremely honest when giving feedback? That's a great question. Very great, very good question. So two answers for this question again. One is personality tests, and the other one is the surveys, the internal surveys. When you're running an internal survey, the way that to make employees comfortable is to make them sure that they are not going to share the names. So that's the first rule. When you are running an internal survey, they are not going to share the names. It has to be private in an anonymous way, so they can feel that they can be open and honest to share that feedback, and you have to take that in consideration. So they have to be anonymous. In the case of personality test, of course, they have to share their names, but you have to explain that personality tests are going to be used in a way that you are going to use the information to be shared privately with the members of your team, just managers or owners, and they will be shared back with them, but in a way that these guys, they don't feel that you are invading their privacy. And once they take these kind of tests, they will see that the questions are very easy for the most part. In a lot of the tests, they are not right or wrong answer. There are multiple options for these kind of questions. So it's very easy to have access to these kind of tests. So once you explain why you're doing this and the advantages that these will take into the place, I think they will feel comfortable. The other question in here from the audience is from, it says here, with employees being so difficult to come by on farms, how does this help attract and retain our employees? That's another great question. I think I can answer this. You're right. Nicole, it is very hard right now that is the reality, it's really hard to attract employees and find employees. These tests right now, I don't think the consideration should be to run these tests just to say if you're going to hire or not an employee or a candidate. I think you have to hire right now based on in a different situation, not only using this test. In my opinion, what you're going to do with this test once you hire these individuals is to identify what is motivating these individuals and the strongest parts or weakest part of their personality. So then you can adapt to work with these individuals. Some individuals will show different traits to work in a different way than others. And you as a manager or as an owner of the dairy or the organization, you will have to adapt to this individual and find the best roles for these individuals so they can fit in your team and your culture. So I don't think you should they should be scared and these tests should be used in a different way or approach. The other question that we have here is, it says here, Jorge, in our busy day-to-day lives of managing a dairy, how would you suggest we work in the strategy of performing personality tests with our team? That is a great question. Again, you can hire the individual, and then when you find the right time and the right approach for these individuals, maybe the person is already in your dairy even for 3 months or weeks or so, you can run this test anytime. These days they're very accessible, they're very easy to fill, and they can be filled anytime. The purpose of this is, again, for you to adapt to the individual and recognize those things that will motivate this individual. And not only those traits, but more traits, so then you can identify how to work with this person. So you can run it anytime. It hasn't had to happen right away if you are busy. The approach that we have right now is that we hire somebody, we don't take the time to provide feedback or receive feedback from this person, and then time passes, 3 months, 6 months, and then we see the problems on high turnover and routines that are not being performed, protocols not being followed, or SOPs that are not being followed either. So I think this is a tool that can help us to reduce those kind of risk and assess, anytime that you can. So those are the questions that I have for the presentation, Maddie, so far.
Great. I just refreshed, and I think that's all the questions we have. So thank you so much. Oh, actually, it looks like, oh, no. There's one that says, George or Jorge, what is the biggest challenge when administering these tests?
I'm going to refresh these and see if that question will pop up in my screen. Okay, yes, I'm going to repeat the question again, and it says, Jorge, what is the biggest challenge when administering these tests? That's a great question. I think first is going to be the culture of the dairy in the industry. We're not really organized when it comes to recruiting, so these tools are not used a lot on dairies. So I think that's going to be the first roadblock. There are so many benefits that these tests and tools can bring a value to the organization and the dairy industry, but unfortunately they are not. So I think that's the first challenge. The second challenge, I think, is going to be language and how some candidates will see as maybe a way to invade their privacy. The third challenge might be some communication roadblocks, and especially from people coming from different cultures with lack of education or really basic education. These questions are really basic and are really easy to understand, but sometimes the candidates tend to overthink these questions and not really understand the questions even if they are easy. So I think culture on the dairy being the roadblock, then the approach, and then the language and the education are going to be some of the challenges, and I've seen those before. And I think that's the last question. Is that correct? Last question, is that one?